And what I'm scared about, Avi, and this happened in London a couple of days ago, is 100,000 Brits. And when I say Brits, some of them are British citizens, many of them are not. But I didn't see a single British flag. They have it's a tribal support for the atrocious attacks, praising the terrorist attacks, and flipping the script on Israel, using the word Holocaust against them, using the word Nazi against them. I'm actually more worried about the West than I'm worried about Israel. And you're standing in London now. What do you think of all that?
Yeah, so I interviewed a local rabbi here at the Ark just an hour or so ago, which we'll obviously publish in coming days. But he said he's planning on running away from London, taking his family to Israel. And let that sink in a second, because I'm telling you now, Ezra, we were on the front line. It was scary. We were wearing a bulletproof vest and a helmet, running away from rockets at points, literally from mortars, trying to get to safety. I can tell you now, I feel safer there in Sderot, in southern Israel, than I do walking the streets of London. Now, why do I say that? Is because, over the next, once the war is over, we're going to find out more as to what went wrong. But at this point in time, certainly Israel was asleep at the wheel on October 7. Now, since then, it's gone into full gear overdrive. We've seen even something that I didn't believe would be possible. They've managed to rescue already one of the hostages, which I'll be honest with you, I've been in the military and I just did not think it was possible. So, and I think it's important for the morale of the Israelis for them to know that it's actually possible and Israel's going to be back. And I think that this needs to be an Entebbe moment for Israel for a number of reasons. I think the Israeli population needs to believe in it. I think the Arab world needs to see that Israel is back. But
just to interrupt, Entebbe, for our viewers who don't know, was a daring raid when there was a hijacked plane in Uganda, and Israeli special forces flew to Uganda and rescued all the hostages. In fact, Benjamin Netanyahu, his brother, was on that mission and died.
The only death, yep.
Sorry, just a little bit of history. So a shock and awe, wow moment that gave Israel and Jews a feeling of strength and pride, because I also feel a demoralization that the only democracy in the Middle East and the only Jewish country was smashed and surprised, and its strength and confidence was dashed. And I think that's a psychological injury to the Jews of the world and to the Jewish state.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's why I say there has to be that kind of Entebbe moment, which I'm expecting, because that's the only way Israel's going to win this. When you talk about smashing Hamas, whatever that means, beating Hamas, there has to be something where the world goes, okay, don't mess with Israel again, even with all the propaganda. But the reason why I say it's safer there is because now, at this point, I feel like the Jews have, a defense force. They have an army, they have an air force, they have the Iron Dome, they have the bomb shelters. They've built all this to protect the Jews. Walking in London, if I walk in London and I get recognized by that mob, I don't think I'm very safe, and I don't feel very safe. And it's not just in my head, because you see it on the streets and you talk to every Jew here and they say they know personal stories, and Jews are fleeing. Jews are fleeing the West. They're fleeing London to go to the war zone for safety.
Israel is obviously in a very dangerous place. 1,400 people murdered, 240 or so kidnapped, thousands wounded, rockets daily. But they have one thing that the UK, with all its military might, and the United States, with its enormous military might, they have one thing that the UK and America and Canada don't have, which is they have come to the conclusion that the utopia of open borders, immigration, and they are willing to name the risk and call it by its name, whereas here in London, where I went sort of in a very low-key way to the 100,000 person march for Hamas, and the police made almost no arrests. There were some scuffles. They didn't invoke any anti-terrorism laws. They didn't deport any foreign nationals who were inciting hatred. In fact, I saw a video of an indigenous Brit who said, "What's with all these flags?" He was arrested by police. My point is, Canada, America, UK, Australia are still in denial. Every single day, thousands of people come who are not with the peaceful, prosperity, pluralistic, we can all get along, separation of mosque and state. No, they're not with that. Some are. There are some refugees from Islamic extremism who are become perfect Brits and Canadians and Americans. But I saw 100,000 people who, if they could, would. Well, they say it. They say they would have an intifada, which is a Arabic way, basically, of saying a pogrom. Just last night in a tube station, a subway station, Liverpool subway station here in London, hundreds of pro-Hamas supporters shut down the whole subway station. And if you were a Jew, maybe wearing a kippah or other identifying marks, Star of David maybe, in that train station, I didn't see any police. There might be a few transit cops. Would you be pogromed like that 500-person pogrom in Dagestan, Russia, where they were hunting for the Jews? There's a fear here because not just of the enemy, but that the government has not in any real way realized it's in a war. And it's in Dagestan, Russia. Will it come to London and Sydney? They were chanting, "Gas the Jews" in Sydney. And as far as I know, no one's been arrested, let alone charged, let alone deported. That's what's scary about London, Toronto, etc., is people are sticking their head in the sand like an ostrich. That's what's scary to me.
I think there's 2 points that you made there that remind me of 2 things that are important for the viewers. Is one, when you say about the borders and Israel recognizing the issue, something that many outside of Israel don't know is that actually what Israel found on many of the terrorists were hand-drawn maps of each house, including as much information as whether they had a dog, how many kids. And where it turns out this came from was that actually they talk about Gaza being an open-air prison, but you can actually get a permit. So Palestinians were able to get work permits to work in those southern communities, in a lot of those kibbutzim. And it turns out, because there were also some of the terrorists that were killed were those same workers that had been coming in using the permits. I think now that's going to hurt their system because they're going to rethink the idea, which is kind of the idea of open border immigration, trying to work in a way for peace. The idea was the more that you work with your neighbor and you talk every day, then you're going to find more in common. But in this case, it turned out, no, they acted nice to your face, but they were actually part of this plan to butcher and kill you. And the other one is here, just minutes ago, I ran into Jimmy Carr. I'm a massive fan of his, and
He's a comedian.
He's a very funny comedian, and I fangirled him here, and I actually pulled him up and I said, "Hey, Jimmy, I'm a massive fan." I don't think he believed me. I thought he was just trying. I would love to ask you a few questions. He said, "I'm not doing interviews." But then I put the mic away and I went up to him, "Hey, Jimmy, I actually am a fan of yours." And I wanted to actually ask you, because it's off the record, but what I was going to ask you is, it was last year where an organization he called Hope Not Hate tried its very best to have him cancelled over a Holocaust joke. Now, the joke was part of his Netflix series. It was quite a funny joke. It's a bit... you can see it's a Holocaust joke, not for everyone, but they tried to have him cancelled for a Holocaust joke that he clearly didn't mean. It's satire. And that same organization, and that was widely publicized, and they basically got props by the Jewish community organizations were supporting this Hope Not Hate for that stance to have him cancelled. But in the last 3 weeks, that same organization hasn't said a word about the hundreds of thousands that have marched for the street calling for the actual murder of Jews. Now, Jimmy went into an amazing rant after that. Unfortunately, it was, I respected his thing not to be, we're not here out to get him. I actually think it's an important story for people. But that's the reality here. They're willing to dig their heads so far in the sand here to protect, I don't know why, to protect this minority that's not this weak minority in Britain. They're actually more powerful than any other community here. And they're willing to protect them against the smallest minority in the world. That's what is mind-boggling, and that's why, if anything, it shows us, it just demonstrates why Israel is so important for the Jews around the world, its existence is so important because for the first time in my life, Ezra, I could see how the Holocaust actually played out and how it easily happens.
You know, I feel the same way. And again, not for what happened in Israel, but for what is happening out here and how you're so right. People who are expert at finding microaggressions and triggers and who need safe spaces because you misgendered me. I'm a she, her, they, them, not, people who claim to be so exquisitely attentive to human rights and feelings are not only silent in the face of these hate marches, they're the ones marching in them. They never meant it. It was all about power. And I always come back to what Dr. James Lindsay says. The issue is not the thing. The issue is not the issue. The revolution is the issue. So all these groups, these left-wing groups, these anti-hate groups, these, gays for Palestine, how could it possibly be? You'd be killed in Gaza. Well, because it's a revolution against white people, and they say that Jews are white, even though a lot of Israelis are Sephardic. It's the decolonization, cultural Marxism. We must destroy Israel. It's an arm of the West. We must bring it down. They're the oppressor. They ascribe to, even though Israel has been victimized for millennia, they call it the oppressor. Even though there's 33 Muslim countries, Israel is the odious one. I don't know. I find these are dark days, and I'm not sure how much appetite our audience has for it because I've been talking about it almost every day. But I would say that I talked about 9/11 every day for a very long time also. And I see that this will engulf, if God forbid the fires keep burning, it'll engulf more than just Israel. I mean, it's bizarre to me that Bolivia has cut diplomatic ties with Israel and Yemen has declared war. I think that, I think your family was from Yemen originally. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, your name is Yemini.
I think it's the Houthis terrorist group.
Iran's agents in Yemen.
It's all a proxy war, and that's the thing. Like, you've got Iran and people. It's bizarre seeing what I'm calling the unholy alliances, whether it's on the streets of London with these socialist left, which, by the way, you see the Palestinians kind of looking at them, in some cases actually ripping these gay flags out of their hands. But even the ones that are accepting them, they're accepting them for now. Once they're done with the Jews, they're going to go for the gays. Like, you don't have just read their own charter to know that, or just see the way they treat gays in Gaza to be able to predict what's going to happen if they actually get their way, either in Israel or here.
You remind me of a video I just saw this morning of a Hamas leader saying there will be another attack, that they want to kill another 1,400. And again, they called their mission Al-Aqsa flood because they were flooding into Israel. And the Hamas leadership says, oh, we will do this again. It was successful. We'll do it again and again and again. Here, take a quick look at that video.
إسرائيل دولة لا مقام لها على أرضنا. إحنا الدولة لابد أن نزيلها لأنه بالفعل هي تعتبر كارثة أمنية وعسكرية وسياسية للأمة العربية والإسلامية. يجب أن تنتهي. لذلك إحنا لا نخجل من نقول ذلك بكل قوة. إنه إسرائيل لازم نأدبها وحنأدبها مرة ثانية وثالثة، ومش هذا حتكون طوفان الأقصى أول مرة، لا حتكون ثانية وثالثة ورابعة، لأنه إحنا لدينا إصرار ولدينا قرار ولدينا إمكانيات أن نقاتل نعم. ونحارب. لكن كما قلت لك بدنا ندفع ثمن. نعم إحنا مستعدين. معلش بدي أقول لك بشكل واضح، إحنا اسمنا شعب الشهداء وبنفخر أن نقدم شهداء. إحنا لا نريد أن نمس لا بالمدنيين ولا أن نلحق الأذى بهم، لكن أوقات لأنه في تعقيدات في الميدان صارت في منطقة موجودة، وكان هناك في احتفال وكان في سكان وفي منطقة واسعة ليست سهلة على امتداد تقريبا 40 كيلومتر. يجب أن ننتهي.
أن ينتهي وين؟ بقطاع غزة؟
ينتهي إلى لا بتكلم عنه كل الأراضي الفلسطينية.
كل الأراضي الفلسطينية يعني زوال طبعا. إسرائيل؟
طبعا. وجود إسرائيل غير منطقي. وجود إسرائيل هو اللي بخلق كل هذه الآلام والعذابات والدموع والدماء. هي إسرائيل مش إحنا ضحية الاحتلال، نقطة وآخر السطر. لذلك ما حدا يلومنا، إحنا شو اللي بنعمله في 7 أكتوبر، في 10 أكتوبر، في مليون أكتوبر. إحنا اللي بنعمله مبرر. It is justified، مبررة.
When the enemies of Israel say cease fire, They're not saying ceasefire to Hamas. Hamas is firing rockets every day. They're not saying ceasefire to the guy who just said we want to rape and murder 1,400 more. They're saying ceasefire to Israel as if it was on the day after 9/11 or the day after Pearl Harbor. So I interrupted you.
All while not releasing the hostages. Right. That's what you got to remember. That was a horrific attack on October 7th. But the ongoing attack, the fact that they still hold on to mostly civilian hostages.
Including babies, for God's sake.
Including babies. And that the world tells Israel to cease fire. Listen, I think Israel needs to do what it should have done a long time ago, and that's ignore the world, do what's in its own in its own interest because its existence relies on this. It depends on this. If Israel listens to the world, ceases fire, lets them have the hostages, that there is going to be no Israel in the very near future.